I want to say thank you so much to Steve Lyus for joining us tonight. And I'll just give a little bit of a brief introduction to Steve. He is a passionate plantsman and he works on the Rhododendron, Camellia and Magnolia Group Committee along with myself. And he is going to share with us tonight his passion for plants through the journeys that he's made, the journey that he made through Galicia, and the trail, the Camellia Trail that was set up by the Galician Tourist Board in order to promote camellias and the spectacular camellias that they have in that region of northwestern Spain. So tonight, let's get going, and it will be a pleasure to listen to Steve talk about camellias, and at the end, we can have questions. If you want to post any questions on the chat at the end, I'll ask your question for you to Steve, and we should have a good discussion. So go ahead, Steve, it's over to you.
Right, good evening, everyone. This is the first time we've been doing this, so I guess one has to expect little issues. In 2014, I attended the ICS, the International Camellia Society's Congress in Pontevedra in northwest Spain. We took our camper van from Portsmouth to Santander and then toured along the northwest coast along their brand new dual carriageway. My supposedly up-to-date sat-nav just showed me driving over all the hills, which was a bit disconcerting. We arrived in Pontevedra just in time for the start of the Congress. It seems that northwest Spain and Portugal is recognized as the best climate in Europe to grow camellias, which is why there are so many old ones there, all growing very happily. I gave this talk first to our northwest branch in 2015, so hopefully some of you will remember it. I split my talk into 3 sections. A little bit about the history of camellias, why are there lots of very old camellias in this part of Europe, and then the main part of the talk going through some of the Camellia route that's been promoted. And finally, this was a proper Congress, so there were learned papers presented to us on 3 half days. I've chosen a few of those lectures that I think people should be interested in. So, history of the camellias. You have to go way back in history. The Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494, run by the Pope, split the spheres of influence in the Catholic world between Spain and Portugal, right down the middle of the Atlantic. This meant that the Portuguese navigators could get to East Asia via the Cape of Good Hope, and the Spaniards had a much worse job of getting there via Cape Horn and then the Philippines. But they did manage to get to the Far East to start to see things like camellias. The English and Dutch obviously took no notice of that ruling and went via the Cape of Good Hope because that was a damn sight easier route. So from the 1500s, stories were coming back to Europe about these Chinese roses. And they realized that there's no way they could bring back live plants. So they were continually trying to bring seeds back. And it took a long time for them to get them to propagate. And as all of us who've ever tried to propagate camellias know, that if the seed's not very fresh, and it takes a lot of work and prayer to get it to germinate. So it means that in this part of Portugal, this part of the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Galicia for Spain, there are a very large number of very old camellias, many well over 150 years old. It's noteworthy that they're all planted outside. They never put them into greenhouses when they first came over or when they first propagated them. All these oldest ones are these single red flowers, what's called rubra simplex. And these are the 3 pictures of 3 currently living, oldest living camellias in Europe. Late 1700s, they are thought to have been first growing. So there's one in Portugal, one in Italy, just north of Naples, and one in Pillnitz, which is in old East Germany. That has its own wonderful, huge conservatory, glass-built thing that is moved open in the summertime, and at wintertime it's completely closed off. Amazing construction. Now going to the actual Camellia Route. In 2006, the autonomous territory of Galicia decided Camellia was going to be their flower. And they then started thinking, the marketing people decided they could use this as a wonderful way of attracting tourists in the off season. The idea of getting tourists into Galicia in the winter was very much what they wanted to encourage. So they looked at all their best gardens, and they chose 12 with different characteristics. As you can see there, 2 were urban, 2 were public but open daily, 2 public open occasionally, 3 private open daily, and 3 by appointment only. And so those are the 12 that are marketed very heavily. The camellias hybrids you'll find there's not many species, 1 or 2, are hybrids of Japonica, reticulata, and sasanka. And what is obviously, these are proper gardens, so they're not just camellia gardens. So there's lots of other interesting genera, as we'll see as I go through a few of these gardens. I'm not proposing to go through all 12 because I'm sure I'll put everyone to sleep by then. So I'm choosing 6. Their marketing material is really quite excellent. There's a map of the route, and then each of the 12 gardens has its own little pamphlet. And so I'm going to be using the material in the pamphlets for 6 of the gardens. If any of you live near me, you're welcome to borrow the collection. They are from 2014, so they may be slightly out of date now. So just to be sure everyone knows where I'm talking about, there's a very highly detailed map of Western Europe with Galicia in the top north and northwest corner of Iberia. If we blow that up a bit, these are the 4 areas of Galicia. All these gardens are in the 2 western ones, and they're numbered on that map. So I'm going through 6 of those. The first one, actually number 1 up the top north, this particular site was originally a military tower built at the end of the Middle Ages, and eventually it got turned into a manor house by the 18th century. It's known as being the first house to have created its own ornamental garden. I guess up to then gardens were for feeding yourselves. The camellias in this garden arrived in the last third of the 19th century and are planted in peculiar ways, geometrically in groups. Like this one in the top here. I can change the pointer, can't I? Yes, this peculiar looking bit of growth is what they call the Camellia 8+1. What that means is there's 8 camellias planted in a circle and 1 in the middle. And this particular one's circumference is 8 meters, the height is 7 meters. And again, it's that rubra simplex, that simple red. Each of these pamphlets has got a map of the garden. Now, you're probably all staring at that thing, I can't read any of that. Well, I'm not intending you to take too much notice. It's more the principle of what you can get. but I can use the magnifying glass on this latest PowerPoints. And so all these gardens, the marketing layout is very similar. All the pink, every pink dot is a camellia. And if there's a number in it, then that identifies that camellia. And in the pamphlet, it tells you what's what. So if you take this number 7 down here, that's Scipione l'Africano. Now, that's not a camellia I've ever heard of. Fascinating name. For those of you who remember your Latin, Scipio Africanus was the Roman general who sacked Carthage, destroying Hannibal's base. So what that's got to do with camellias, I have no idea. So you can see here these long lines of camellias, little circles. There's the 8+1 is on the entrance of the garden. So you come, this is the entrance way. There's 2 8+1s at the entrance there. Anything else of noteworthy? No, not this garden has got many brilliant ones. Let's get back to normal magnification. So pictures from the garden, that's looking out into the estuary with the what they call the French garden. And move on, that's the house behind us where that photo is taken. So very pleasant conditions. Don't know whether you noticed, but this particular whole area is called A Coruña. The city of A Coruña was a fabulous place. This is a picture of some of the buildings in the port. I was very impressed with it. All very clean. Also amused by this great big statue on the port there, and that commemorates when the Galicians fought off the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy was trying to take over A Coruña, and this statue is of the wife of the captain of the guard. The captain of the guard got killed in the battle, so she took up his spear and took it to the Royal Navy and won. And so that's a dead Brit on the floor there. Don't often see the results of people fighting us, do we? Beautiful estuary there. If any of you are bird fanciers, I'm sure you'll see an awful lot of interesting birds in that area. Right, the next garden is Alameda de Santiago de Compostela. So this is in the city of Santiago de Compostela. Alameda means alleyway, line of trees. So this particular garden is the oldest public one in the city, early 19th century. Quite a large size, 21 acres. It has one hell of a lot of oaks, Quercus robur. And you'll see when I show you the map what I mean by that. They have 66 Camellia japonica hybrids, many over 100 years old, with 54 other species of tree. So here's the map. Let's magnify it. Okay. So all those brown dots, they're all Quercus robur. The camellias are not very many on here. The pink dots, remember? So there's lines here and the lines on the left-hand side and a few dotted around. This is the alleyway, the Alameda. And what else can we see there? Yes, there's interesting. You'll see this Pomponia Camellia japonica, white one. This one's Alba monstruosa. I can't say I know that one. I know Dom Pedro II. Quite a, starts pink and then fades. So there's a lot of other trees there, and all the booklets are impressive. With those that they've identified, you can easily find what they are. So if we're on the ground there in that alleyway, there's all the elm trees. No, not elms. Yes, elms. And camellias around it. And if you get looking at the closer to the trees, the camellia trees are quite enormous if you see the scale of the man down the bottom there. Santiago is obviously the end point of the pilgrimage to that cathedral. And all over, certainly in northern Spain, you see this starburst, which is the sign of the route to Santiago. You see that on road signs. In the little towns, you see brass slabs on various walls. So to allow the people on the pilgrimage to know that they're on the right route. And this map shows how comprehensive the regular routes are. The big red one through northern Spain, it gets joined from France and also from within Spain. And I heard the other day that there is a route to this cathedral from Britain. I'm not quite sure where it starts and how it gets across the channel. The right-hand side, this picture here is a picture of the beautiful cathedral. When we were there, it was totally covered in scaffolding, so I would have liked to have seen it looking like this, but maybe next time. The next Pazo, these are just names. Pazos are basically stately homes or large dwellings for rich people. This is a major garden. It's termed the Versailles of Galicia and is the most visited. It has very famous for them the classic Camellia reticulata Captain Rawes, the first reticulata that was brought to Europe by Captain Rawes. I'm not sure it's the oldest and tallest. I saw a fantastic one in Lake Maggiore on, I think it's Isola Bella, if not Isola Madre. That was absolutely enormous. But anyway, that's this tree on the bottom right-hand corner. Unfortunately, the photograph doesn't do it justice. It must have taken the photo too late. But that one is 12 meters tall. They've been planting a lot more camellias, species and hybrids, more than 1,000 in the last few years, well, years before 2014. One of their special features is a labyrinth hedge of Camellia japonica. There's also a 250-meter hedge with 300 of Camellia japonica Mont Blanc. And they also have a few pompones, the bicolors, they're where the plant can't make up its mind. Some of the flowers are white, some are pink, and some are red. Look at this one's plan. So there's the enormous number of, there's your 300 camellias along the bottom there. That's the Mont Blanc line. And you can see the picture up the top here. There's the labyrinth. It's a barely knee-high labyrinth, so you're not going to get lost in that. There's one in the Canadian Cornwall garden, isn't there? That's grown, can't remember which one it is. That says planted a Camellia maize, but that's a proper one above eye level. I don't know whether many of you have been there for that. So there's a picture of the pompone, lots of different colours on the same plant. And there's a Captain Rawes. That being reticulata, that's dinner plate size flower, certainly in this part of the world. Notice there's a nice lake in the middle there. So there's a picture showing the lake at ground level, and there's the Pazo behind, all very organized. Next one, the Pazo de Rubians. This, I guess, is probably my favorite one there. It's one of our gardens of excellence. So the ICS has had this Garden of Excellence label for, must be about 12 years now. And this one got this. They have to jump through a number of hoops, number of plants. So it has to be all well labeled and well looked after. It's the first place I've ever seen this proper yellow camellia, Camellia nitidissima, outside. It's grown outside. Even the Japanese have to grow them in indoors. I would love that one. That's a proper yellow. The Jury's yellows and Brushfield's yellows don't do it for me. Once you've seen this, it is quite a large estate, 68 hectares, although 25 hectares are the Albarino white wine, which was very pleasant. So this Pazo got its first camellias in 1850. They also had early evergreen magnolias, but it was 1930 when they really started planting many, many more camellias. And recently, coming up to the Congress, they planted many more. So this map you can see is absolutely covered in pink. Look at it. These lines of them. You could very easily get lost because you're in a curved line of camellias with nothing to orientate yourself from. This species here, I don't know how many of you have seen this one, Amplexicaulus. It is a fantastic, it's a very tender one. This flower is very thick, sort of like wax petals, quite big. That's about 6 inches across. I saw one for sale in Tregrain and bought it, but that was unfortunately the first day of our holiday in Cornwall. And by the time we left, it was dead. And I only had it outside the house we were time sharing. So it obviously doesn't like the idea of leaving Cornwall. Camellia japonica Bob Hope. That's one I've heard of, although you don't often see it. But that one you can spend hours and hours wandering around looking at the plants. All the lines here are the Albarino vines. So that's an aerial view looking down at the Pazo and the formal garden in front. And if you were standing in the formal garden, that's what it looks like. So these are quite large bits of topiary. We had one of our lunches, nice bit of hors d'oeuvre and the Albarino wine, and we were serenaded by this little group of 4 musicians, all obviously got silly hats, and 2 bagpipes. So these are Spanish bagpipes and 2 different sized drums. It wasn't unpleasant. You can see where the scale of some of their camellia plants when you see this was one of our group in amongst them. Absolutely astounding. I got quite excited about this tree because I couldn't believe it had grown like this. How many of you know this tree, Ericaceous japonica or loquat tree? It doesn't flower or even fruit in Britain as far as I know, but in Spain and Italy and obviously Japan it does. It's quite pleasant, a bit like an apricot in many respects. But its root it's sort of somehow in a crack there, and it's balancing else on another root just goes inland. It is a lovely plant. I've brought one back from Japan from seed from something I ate there. It's still alive. The next Pazo, now getting on the coast. This very small garden, only 5 hectares, and the design of the garden was created by Brenda Colvin, an English landscape architect. It's not someone I know. I don't know whether anyone in my audience knows her. She's got 23 Camellia hybrids, but lots and lots of other plants, rhododendrons, magnolias, Australian myrtle and proteas, and some ericaceous from South America. So we get a variety of plants shown off. Oops. So not too many pinks, but an awful lot of other blobs, brown blobs. So we got Sasankas, Jean May, the Hymalis. That's the hybrid between Japonica and Sasanka. We've got a rhododendron, Griffithianum, a nice protea there. And what else have we got down the bottom here? A reticulata, royalty, another retic, Mandalay Queen. That's a nice one. I would fancy one of them. And there's Nitidissima outdoors in this garden. I think that's a fabulous picture of Magnolia tripetala. My seedling died when I brought it up here, unfortunately, in the winter of 2010, 2011. I'll show a picture on these later on, but that's a granary store that is dotted all over Galicia, really ancient. I thought they were pagan burial mounds, but no, granary stores. And the building at this Pazo was really quite rudimentary, but the garden was fascinating. The biggest one of them all, a proper castle, Castle de Sotomayor. Again, a Camellia Society Garden of Excellence, a hell of a lot of camellias there. It started off as a proper castle, 12th century, but it's now a hotel actually run by the Pontevedra government. So you can stay there. There are quite a few of these 12 gardens in this tourist trail you can actually stay at. This one also has got a lot of vineyard space, plus native forest fruit trees and a botanic park. 500 camellia plants of 25 species and many, many more hybrids. One of their camellias has 18 trunks at the base, so it's not an 8+1, it's an 18+0 with a 17-meter crown diameter, thought to be the largest camellia in Spain. Again, as you can see from the map here, there, whoops. A lot of pink in various areas, lines and lines of pink down here. Pink all the way around there. It's the first time I've ever seen Longicarpa out in the garden. Saw it in Japan in undercover. They've got a lot of tree ferns. And we've got, I've never heard of Milarenga japonica. Clifford Parks is a well-known reticulata. They have lots and lots of do's in this castle, all well lit. We had our Congress main dinner in the place, very atmospheric. And there's a jury's yellow or two in the garden. That's a small picture of the 18 camellias in one group. So all very nice and peaceful garden, this one. You get dumped at the coach right at the bottom of the hill. So there's this long winding lane brings you up, and it's planted with camellias both sides, which took our group a very, very long time to get to the top, as you can see. So here's a closer picture of the 18 camellias in one plot. I was amused by this one, so I took the picture. Generally, in these enormous trees, you can't see the flowers, which is terribly brilliant. But this one's obviously decided to play ball, and it's a nice little cluster there. So you can actually get fairly close to see what it's like. They now have it all well marketed. The outside every one of these gardens, they have this standard sign with the name of the garden in the middle there. That's new from when we came. So that's the tour. Remember, there's another 6 gardens there. Certainly plenty to look at. The Camellia Congress is run on the mornings of 3 of the days. And they have these 5 streams in 2014. I've chosen to take a few of the talks from the 3rd and 4th areas, themes that were there. Thought they might be of interest to some of you. The first ones are hybrids of some of these fantastic species that have, well, I'd say recently found in China. Of course, the Chinese have known about them forever, but the Western world has only known about some of these for, well, probably 20 years max. Now, the Chinese have become very aware of how marketable these hybrids are, and they've been very much focusing on these 2 species, Amplexicolis and Azalea, and trying to generate hardy ones of these that they can then sell within China. So this one, Amplexicolis, another picture of the species there. Those leaves are, so that's say 6 inches across. The leaves are about 9 inches long, quite tough and hairy. These pictures here show some of the hybrids they have generated. So they basically use Amplexicolis as mother, and they're adding pollen from anything they think would be fun to cross with. And those, that's the, how many is that? So that's 12 images they published of the results. So I would bet Nitidissima is probably the parent of some of these yellows, or the pollen parent. This graph I thought was fun. We all have heard the term hybrid vigor. Well, for Amplexicolis, they showed us this. Remember, it is a tropical camellia. The annual growth of Amplexicolis is 1/2 meter. And they're not kidding on that. And for Amplexicolis, you would expect it to be 1.5 meters high in 3 years. The average of the cross parents they were using to do this hybridizing is about the 25 centimeters that we would hope for in some of our plants, meaning that after 3 years, our plants are about 1/2 meter. Well, the hybrids of these 2, you've got 3/4 of a meter annual growth. And after 3 years, the plant's at 2.5 meters. I don't know what it goes to at 10 years. Unfortunately, both this and the next one, the Chinese are gaily creating these, and you'll see thousands, if not tens of thousands of hybrids are being produced. But they're not coming out of China. So I don't know whether anyone in the audience can persuade the Chinese to sell them to some British nurseries, but I'm sure they would be gobbled up. So this one, Camellia azalea, is another fantastic camellia. That's the species on the left. What is particularly good about this one is it's actually very pretty flower in its own right, but the plant flowers pretty much 12 months of the year. It's not a huge, fantastic display all the time, but it has new flowers available all through the year. So that obviously is quite desirable. So again, they're throwing everything against that as the mother. And these are the kinds of figures they're talking about. They've done more than 150 cross combinations, including 40 species and over 100 cultivars, pollinated 150,000 flowers, and out of that they've generated 4,500 hybrid seedlings. Of those, these F1 hybrids, they got 350 to bloom, and there's 8 of them they're showing off there. The F2 hybrids, so this is a back cross of Camellia azalea, pollen put back on an F1 hybrid. So they got 150 of those now blooming. They also, canny Chinese, they noticed while they were in the areas with all these Camellia azalea species, they noticed there were lots of chance seedlings. So they added 80 of them to the store. Of course, they'll never know who the pollen parent was. So out of all this lot, they then have chosen a number of these that they like, and they have 60,000 now propagated for sale. They're giving statistics like I've written at the bottom there. These hybrids can cope with above 38 degrees centigrade in summer and below -5 in winter. And they say some will cope with under 11 degrees below 0. So that would work quite well in this country. This was amusing. One person who got up to talk had done a survey of all the Camellia hybrids in botanic gardens around the world. And these are the top, 7. So number 1 is debutante, with 32 botanic gardens have got debutante. It then goes down Donation, Elegans. I don't know Setsugeka, Sasanka. Blood of China's a lovely big red. Yuletide's a useless plant in my humble opinion. And Debbie is obviously quite a favourite in this country. But it's interesting to see which are the top ones. Right, now on to something we do have to consider. Pests and diseases. I picked just the aerial disease and flower blight. So examples of aerial diseases, I always think it's very useful to see the real pictures of things. And they showed us these. So these are the bacteria and viruses. So that's that Phomopsis camelliae. So that's all these little brown blobs on the stems. Whereas this on Botryosphaeria, that's the cause of all these dark brown bits that I certainly have. They weren't giving any cunning plans to stop it. Basically, the only way seems to be to pick off the leaves and not put it in your compost, to burn it. Flower blight. There were quite a few sessions on flower blight. Flower blight is now so bad in New Zealand that nobody buys camellias anymore. It is rife there. So there's quite a lot of research going on in New Zealand universities and also in Pontevedra. In they got a technical station there that does a lot of work on camellias, and they're trying hard to find ways to combat it. So this is what it looks like if you've not seen it, Sibirinia camelliae. It's a fungus. The key thing is this ring. I mean, it's sometimes white like that. In my observations, it's generally black. So you see a black ring beneath the stamen. As soon as you see that, you know you've got it. And for me, the jury's yellow is absolutely atrocious. Every single bloom gets it. So you have to pick every bloom off and bin them. This is what it looks like when it's starting to grow the fungus on the ground. They showed this map or this diagram of the annual circle of the flower blight. So in December, the spores are in the air and getting into the flowers. You then see the brown starting. You then get the horrible brown black when the flowers drop. The fungus then becomes a sclerotia. So it's the growth body on the ground developing on the flowers. And then there's 6 months of this body growing. And round about November, it then creates its fruiting body and the spores go in the air. And so it goes round and round. So what people are trying to do, 3 lines of attack. They found this fungus, trichoderma, that if they put it on the sclerotia, it colonizes it and kills them. So 100% death. Unfortunately, the big problem there is how do they get it, trichoderma, available to be for us to dish out without having to paint every bit of sclerotia. So that's work to be done. Another option is to spray the flowers. Now, this is very frustrating. They've found several sprays that are 100% successful in the lab, but 0% successful in the field. So that's back to round 1. The final option, which is being trialled in New Zealand, is to hybridize with Camellia lutuensis. What the idea here is to find Camellia species that have natural resistance to flower blight and then to create hybrids with that. And lutuensis is meant to be having great potential. So you never know, in 20 years' time, all our hybrids maybe have some lutuensis blood in them. Little bit of tourist pictures. Grain stores I talked about. These were weird until we realized what they were. You're driving along and suddenly see one of these in the field. And look at this one. It's 35 meters long. Just grain stores. Coming towards the end, I thought I'd better say something about the ICS. I guess most of you will have heard of it, but if you haven't, it was created back in the early 1960s when a number of people involved in camellias got fed up with loads of different camellias with the same name. So they decided to set up the ICS to manage hybrid naming. And the society's gone on from that. There are branches now in many countries around the world. They create a high quality yearbook, just like ours, and have local trips and meetings. But the reason why I'm a member, and I think quite a few other people, is they have these congresses every 2 years, and they're always in different parts of the world where camellias are native or grown. And what is fantastic, say for Japan or China, for us Westerners that don't speak those languages, all you have to do is pay your money and you turn up at the airport, you're looked after, you're taken to all the best gardens, everything's translated, and you go home very happy with lots of happy memories and pictures. If you are a member, you also get access to all the Congress papers available from the website. So that's the end. That picture I thought was, we need them in some of our gardens. It's a bit rife, and yes, I won't say which nations seem to be really bad at having little scissors in their secateurs in their pockets, but there are some. If any of you want to find out more about and want to do your own route through, that is the website, really friendly. But if you Google the Ruta de la Camellia, you will get to that link. And if you keep your eyes open, looking in the posher tourism brochures, Riviera et al., you'll find that they are now offering tours of Galicia on the Camellia Trail. In fact, I saw one, Cicerone Travel. I never heard of them before, but March 2022, they're offering a Camellia and Pilgrims Spring in Galicia tour. So you may just be able to pay your money and turn up, and they'll take you to them all. So over to you, Wendelin. Stop my share. Yes, that's probably a good idea.
Gwendolyn, you're muted.
You need to unmute, Wendelin.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Steve. That was brilliant and amazing to see the scale of the Camellia gardens that you were showing on the maps. You know, the layout as well is so much more formal, isn't it? Than,
Yes.
you know, here we're used to seeing our camellias growing in a lot more naturalistic sort of way, primarily speaking. So different. We have had a request from somebody. Let me see. Ju and John have asked if you could go over the names of the oldest EU varieties again for them.
Okay. I'll just read them out, shall I?
Yes, that would be fine.
Yeah. I'll get to... So it's Campo Bello in Portugal, Caserta, Caserta in Italy, and Pillnitz, Pillnitz in East Germany.
That's great. Thanks for that. One of the interesting things that if anybody wants to add another question, please do pop it into the chat now. But I just wanted to ask a couple of things as well. Do you know where this 8+1 formation has come from, or why they do it?
I've never seen it anywhere else, so it must be someone in that garden decided that's how they plant them. I mean, when they first come, you don't know how big they're going to go, do you?
Yes. I'm wondering whether whether it's because it makes it into like just an enormous bush of camellia, or whether it's got some kind of more symbolic or artistic you know, garden design reason behind it.
Probably initially the garden design would be, well, I want quite a lot of camellia here, so I'll plant lots. And then not realizing if I just had one, it would actually grow quite big anyway.
yes, exactly.
Especially if pruned.
Unusual.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. I've got a few people who are saying thanks so much. Thanks a million, very interesting. Wish list has gotten longer. I need to go to Galicia.
Yes.
There's probably a few people who are keen on camellias who are feeling that after seeing your talk. I had another question for you, and I hope it's not too difficult to answer, but you mentioned that Yuletide was useless, and I wondered what makes a camellia useless to you, because obviously you're an RHS judge, and it's you know, interesting to know what is it that you're looking for. Why would something like Yuletide be useless?
Well, it's as its name implies, Yuletide, it should be flowering before Christmas. And I first saw it at Wisley, and indeed bought my plant there. And it was flowering there in the nursery at Wisley, but I've since found those all come from Brittany. And obviously the thing is sort of, when I bought it, still French.
Yes.
And then I brought it up north.
Right.
It is the earliest it's flowered for me is late March.
Right. Okay.
And the largest number of blooms I've had is 5.
Right.
I got
Okay.
1 this year.
Okay. So it's a growing conditions issue, you think?
Yes. It.
Right.
I don't know what's. I mean, we're quite far north. It doesn't look happy. It's not lovely deep green. It's a sort of yellow green, and I do try to put some goodies on them.
Yeah.
I'll give it a real talking to this year. You know, it's because I've got plenty of better plants to go in there.
Excellent. Well, I've got a mention here from Ben, and he says Yuletide is probably best as a forced variety. So that's interesting.
What he means by that?
Possibly in a conservatory. I don't know.
Oh.
Ben, if you want to let us know, then do. Polly Cook has said it flowers profusely at Christmas in Surrey.
Oh,
So,
well, it doesn't like going north of the
it doesn't like going north, I think. That's your problem.
Yeah. Does anyone want it?
I also had a query from Philip Eastell, but I thought, although we've answered it on the chat, I think it would be nice to mention the International Camellia Society. Are you actually a member?
Yes.
You are, yeah.
Because of these congresses. In fact, on that, we should have been going to the Italian lakes, Maggiore and Orta, in next spring,
right,
2022. But I've just seen they've just postponed to 2023.
Okay.
So and these congresses, well, it's yes, that's Italy now 2023. So that means it's every 2 years. So the US is going to be 2025, and then it's going to be either China or Japan. It's usually between Europe and Asia, Japan or China.
Yes, because it's quite an impressive society, isn't it? The international, let me see, the International Camellia Society, someone else mentioned, Herb and Pat Short are involved with this, so they should be able to help you.
They run it, yes.
Right. Okay.
They run the UK anyway. She was
okay.
president for 8 years of the whole shebang. Yeah.
I've got some more comments on Yuletide. It looks like we're having a Yuletide festival here. It flowers well under cover, says Ben, in most cases. So under cold glass, great nursery plant in tunnels.
Right. Okay.
Interesting. Okay. We've got here a lady who had difficulty in joining has now said she managed to, and what an excellent talk. Will it be available on YouTube? And yes, it's going to be available on YouTube. I was going to mention that at the end. We have a YouTube channel which comes under the name RHS Rhododendron Camellia and Magnolia Group video. So if you Google that, you'll come up with not only this talk, which should be up in the next couple of days after today, and you can view that when at your leisure, but also it will have all of our other talks that we're going to be carrying forward, and you should still be able to catch the previous talk. That one is only staying on until the 28th of April, which was by Rama Lopez Rivera on rhododendrons. And you can also catch some of our short snippets on YouTube. You can also get the link for YouTube on our social media. So on our Instagram and on our Facebook. Those should be coming up again over the next couple of days. So keep your eyes open for those. For anyone who's an RCM member, you should also be receiving a reminder when it goes up onto YouTube. So that's great. We've got a message from Frida saying that the International Camellia Society, the next Congress will be in the US in 2024. We've got insider knowledge.
Oh, on the website it says 2023 for Italy.
Ah, well, I think everything is fast moving at the moment, Steve. It's constantly changing at the moment, as we know. Lovely. Okay. I was absolutely fascinated to see some of the different types of rhododendrons that you, of camellias that you were showing us, particularly the really waxy petaled ones. So fantastic. Have you had success growing those in your gardens in the UK?
Are you asking the audience or?
I'm asking you, but if anyone in the audience wants to.
No, that was the one I found one. I was so shocked to see it in the Tregrain shop.
Oh yes.
Yes,
and you tried to bring.
I nabbed it immediately.
Yes, so you haven't actually had a go of growing it.
No, well,
yet.
then I put it out. I decided it didn't want to be in central heated building, so I thought I put it on it has a little balcony, the place we were staying at for the week. And there were some cold nights, but I mean, never it went negative. And then when I took it up to put it in the car to bring it home, I thought, it looks a bit dead.
So it sounds as if a little bit sensitive to temperature, perhaps.
Yes, only Cornwall.
We have, yes, exactly, only Cornwall. We have a question from Polly. She says, do you have a Camellia azalea?
No, you can't get them here either. No, I know a German lady who managed to nick one, but yes, you can't get them here either. So I don't think there's any nurseries who can help us out. I'm sure they must be able to do a deal.
Okay. Apparently there is one in Guildford.
Ah. What's the address?
I don't know. If you can let us know the address, that would be great. We've had another message back from Frida, and it was Frida, wasn't it? Let me just see. Oh, sorry, I've just lost my chat. There we go. It was Frida, and she says, no, you are correct for Italy, but the US is the next year in 2024.
Oh, so they're back to even years. Okay.
That's because they've obviously had to skip one. They're
yes.
planning on making up, aren't they? Lovely. Okay, we have a comment. Talk to Jim at Guildford about the Camellia azalea. Lovely. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I think we'll say thank you very much, Steve, and thanks also for your patience this morning, at the beginning of the talk, and thanks to everybody who attended for your patience as well. Lovely. We're receiving thank yous from people. Yes. So thank you so much. I am absolutely loving your tie, Steve, and and we'll look forward to seeing it on YouTube again, catching it up. And yep, more people sending in thanks and very interesting talk.